So I was talking to him about how he did it, but then I mean, it used to be more like this, and then took out the string and put bot on top. And is that okay?
Yeah. So this is what it's supposed to look like. But you're getting error messages.
Yeah. So I can show you. So there's a section.
Saying the name of Prada and ID configuration, which does not exist, which means it's not even able to find the Prada.
So do I have to give a list of the contacts?
So where it looks is in your current working directory. So if you type PWD down here,
oh my God.
that's where it's looking, and so you have to change your directory to the spot that has the.
And I noticed Prada is still like this, even though they put install. Is that?
Sometimes it just takes VS Code a while to update what you have installed, so that should be fine.
I'll give that a shot.
About, I don't know exactly how to really in this flow. That means that somehow user ID. Typically, what that means is that I use Relay, and then once I register, it's used to so like automatically sign in. So let me have to use my password. Is that not what you're you just do like then I would just recommend make sure we're crashing any records now. I'm not sure how that's actually fine. We want to use the 5 bullets. Like, we want to do that.
So yes, welcome to our next CS40 class. Today we're going to continue talking about our Reddit bots, and we're going to get really into the technical weeds here today. I said last time where we ended up last time, we were just talking about the actual homework 4. And we'd gotten to this ethical legal fact, and I said that I would push that off until today. This is a good thing to do, like after talking about some technical details, and when we need a breath of fresh air, our brains need a rest. So we'll put this off and maybe get to it today, maybe on Monday. One of the things that I asked you to do before class today, and it's not strictly required, just recommended, was to do the first few steps of this Lab, where it was asking you to actually create your account. So if you've done that, then you'll be able to follow along with all of the code stuff that we do today. If you haven't done that, then you won't be able to. If everything goes well, it just takes maybe 5 minutes or so to do it. So you can feel free to try to do it right now. But there's a lot of little subtle things, so it might not go well. And if you do run into any errors, I'd be happy to sit down with everybody one-on-one after class and get those worked out. Any questions, big picture questions before we get started on technical stuff for today? Maybe one other thing that I'll point out is that don't normally do Zoom recordings of this section's class. I normally do it of the first sections, but Zoom crashed in the middle of the first section, so we're all being recorded today. So watch what you say. Nothing that you don't want the FBI to hear. Okay, before we get to the technical stuff, quick recap of the grade situation in the class. A lot of stuff was due very recently, and so I just wanted to go over that. Your recent quiz, the BS4 quiz, people did really well on that. Very happy, average of a 9.0. And again, this replaced grades for people who, on the very first quiz, had lower grades, and there were a total of 89 points recovered by 28 people, so a little more than half the class gained some points back. On average, about 3 points each, so that's always exciting. And then the lab, so everyone who submitted it got full credit. And then the homework, the average grade on the homework was a 15 out of 18. The most common mistakes were, so one very common one was people tried to do the extra credit of creating CSV files, and you just changed the file name to .csv, but you still put JSON information inside of it. And so if you did that, you didn't get any points on the extra credit. If I made this note on your assignment and you have a question about why it's not a CSV file, then I'd be happy to talk about that with you in detail one-on-one. Another common mistake that people made was that you were required to parse this information, the price, the shipping, the items sold, into integers rather than just in string format. And so if you didn't do that, then you lost points on this. And then the price parsing in particular, a lot of people had bugs in their price parsing that I was able to find edge cases that your code didn't work on. And so you lost points if that was the case. If you believe that, so a lot of this code, I had to just sort of look at it and use my, running it in my head and see if it works or doesn't work. If you believe that I made a mistake, which is certainly possible, then feel free to let me know, and we'll take a look at that together and get you some points back. Any questions on any of the past assignments and grades? Sorry? Unrelated? Okay. Did I see a hand going up somewhere over here? No? Okay. Then quick overview of the current class grade situation. Current average is a 93%, which is something I'm really happy with because it's 5% higher than the historical averages at this point in the semester for previous classes. And I was talking to some of the other professors about this, and their suggestion, what they said was that I need to make the next month or so of class even harder. And I don't think, so I don't plan on doing that. I'm not going to do that. I think that you all have just risen to the occasion and are doing extremely well in the class, and so I'm very happy. With all my conversations with all of you, I think that as a collective, your class understanding is just better than previous versions. So good job. You shouldn't be punished for that. You should be rewarded. Maybe just one sort of caution, though, is that these last two assignments, so we have two big homework projects left. They are worth more points than the previous ones. So about double the amount of points. This Reddit assignment is worth 30 points, and the last homework was worth 18 points. So keep up the good work. Don't slack off. You're in great shape, and I think that will continue being the case. And also, if your grade is not quite what you want it to be, there are lots and lots of extra credit opportunities on these last few assignments. So on this Reddit assignment, for example, it's possible to get more than 50 points out of 30 on this assignment. You have to do a lot of work to do that, but if you put in that work, then you will be rewarded. And last announcement. So I've been talking to the QCL about getting another mentor for the class. and they have agreed and hired a new mentor, Alex. And Alex has a lot of hours that he's available. It's almost every day of the week, except I think Tuesday and Saturday that he'll be at the QCL. So recommend taking advantage of that. And maybe one last thing to say about that is that both Alex and Brandon might be particularly good mentors for this Reddit assignment if you have questions about that, because they've previously completed this assignment. They were in this class last year. The other mentors, they have lots of broad CS knowledge, but haven't actually done this particular assignment. So if there's just a weird Reddit sort of problem, Alex or Brandon might be able to help you a little bit faster than the other mentors. Any questions about any admin? Yeah.
So for one of the requirements, like the Harry Potter and forgot the exact name, we had to read like a book to get an A or an A minus.
Yes.
And I went to a website and the book is like 2,000 pages.
Yeah, good question. So the question is, so if you want an A minus or an A in the class, then you have to complete either a reading assignment or a video watching assignment. And the reading assignment is a fairly long assignment. It's basically the equivalent of reading like the last Harry Potter book in terms of size. So if you like reading, then that's maybe the choice to do, but you again have the option of doing reading or watching things. And there's also the handful of documentaries that you can watch instead. In terms of total time spent, probably the video watching option is the shorter amount of time. And historically, most students choose to do that since most people prefer watching Netflix to reading a book. Did that answer your question, Charlie? Okay. Good question. Any other questions about, yes?
Is Alex gonna post as a guy?
Alex is a guy. He has posted his times, I think, on GitHub or somewhere. There's an issue somewhere with his times. Yes.
Do you see the GitHub issue on like the video from Monday class not having audio?
I did see that issue. I think it is inherent to that video, and I don't think there's anything we can do about it. So hopefully Zoom will not crash on this session. I think since this session is going to be more technical than the previous one, this will be the more important video. But yeah, I apologize about that. So speaking of Zoom, I have a sort of question for you all, and I'm not sure. So this is something that I'm possibly open to doing, but not guaranteeing that it's something that we will do if people want to do. But it seemed like on homework 3, people really liked the Zoom session where it was about almost twice as long as a normal class, but we went through and actually did most of the assignments step by step. And so I'm considering doing something similar to that again for this Reddit assignment, and canceling the in-person Monday of Thanksgiving week class. And so that would be on Zoom. We'd probably do it early so that you have access to that early, but then you could choose to watch the video whenever you wanted. I see lots of heads up and down, like people like that idea.
So if I remember correctly, the calendar, your recommended date is the Sunday, that Sunday before that class. So then we're supposed to be done with it by that Sunday, then
yeah, so it's a good question about if this is corresponding to a class session that happens after the recommended due date, how does that work? We would basically do it earlier, like Monday or Tuesday next week. So you'd have extra class days next week, but then nothing over Thanksgiving. And if you wanted to, you could choose, you wouldn't have to attend the Zoom session. You could just watch the video on YouTube later when it's convenient for you.
So next week there would be 3 classes and no class following week?
Yes. Yeah. Joe?
In terms of the actual video, I know for the homework for you, it's pretty much we just follow along and like figure out like the cost for some of them at the end. Would it be similar, or would we get less information or more?
So I'm thinking it would be something very similar to that.
Okay.
And again, I'll have to think about this a little bit more about what makes the most sense for you all educationally. But I think so one of the main goals of this course, or one thing that would be a very good takeaway, is just getting practice following videos like that, because there are lots of very excellent videos on different topics in Python out there on YouTube, and that's one of the best ways to learn how to do something, is following those videos. So I think this could be a good just educational thing because it gets you that practice, and I think people might like having Thanksgiving week all the way off. So since it seems like lots of people head nodding, I'll strongly consider that. I'll have an announcement next Monday about that. If for whatever reason you have complaints about that, you can just let me know at some point, and I'll consider that too. Yes?
The Monday of Thanksgiving week, you don't have the quiz at all?
So there's definitely no quiz on Thanksgiving week, no matter what. Yeah, does that answer the question? Okay, all great questions. Any other administrative questions before we get started with technical stuff? Okay, so just a heads up, normally in this section, I'm normally able to see my clock on the computer, and so I can time myself that way. And right now, there's also normally a clock on that back wall, so I can time myself that way. Neither of those exist, so I'll have to remember to look at this clock over here. And so if I do start getting over time, then make sure just to interrupt me and tell me that we're over time, and we'll continue where we are at next week. But today, what we're gonna do, here we are. So there's our next homework assignment is sort of divided up into, there's 2 labs that are basically just completing the first parts of the homework assignments as lab assignments. And these 2 labs are divided into basically reading information from Reddit. That's this first lab that is due this week. It's this week's lab. And then this next lab is writing information to Reddit. And in the first section class, we were able to get through all of this information today. And so after today, the first section class is totally able to complete all of the homework assignment details. We haven't actually gone over the homework assignments and in detail yet, but we've talked about all the techniques. My guess is that we'll probably get to that same place today, but we might not finish up this entire writing to Reddit part, but we will definitely finish up this entire reading from Reddit part, and you'll definitely have all the information after today to complete the lab for this week. So to do the lab, to do this information, I'm going to create a new file and in my week 10 folder. And I'm just creating it in this folder because that's where my pra.ini folder is located. And I'm gonna save this file as Wednesday_section2.py. Let's go ahead and clear this screen down here. Anytime we're working with Reddit, there's always just a few things that we'll have at the top. The import pra, and then Reddit equals pra.reddit of bop, something like this. And exactly what these 2 commands look like will depend on exactly how you've set up your pra.ini file. And so you should have in these 2 lines whatever you had previously gotten working. I'll save this, come down here, just make sure it runs Python 3 Wednesday_section2.py, and excellent, no error messages. To start with in class today, there's a tutorial on Prada that we're going to be going over. So currently I'm just on the Prada documentation website. And down here on this left menu bar, there's this tutorial section, and we want this comment extracting and parsing tutorial. We're gonna go over basically all the details explaining what's going on in this tutorial. And this tutorial is written for somebody who is like already an expert in Python. Basically, it's written for Guido von Rossum who knows Python, but maybe doesn't know this Prada library necessarily, to get them up to speed. And so, because you are all not Guido von Rossum, very understandably, we'll be filling in some extra details here as we go along. And again, I mentioned before that on all of these tutorials, on all this documentation, they always do this bad method one of logging into Reddit just because it's easier from a tutorial perspective, but this is never how you want to do it in real world code in this class. You'll always use the method 2 that uses the Prada.ini file. And again, as a reminder, if you do ever submit your password to me because it's inside of your Python file, or because you submit your Prada.ini file, then not only will you not get any credit on the assignment, you'll get negative credit on the assignment, because it is worse to do something that's actually correct and give up your credentials. It is worse to do that than just to do nothing at all and watch Netflix. Okay, so now onto some actual code. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this stuff right here down into Python, and we'll see what happens. This URL is to a one of the submissions on Reddit. Let's take a look at that real quick. Here we go. And so it's on the subreddit funny, which is just a place where people post funny pictures. And here is the funny picture that somebody posted about all of these download buttons and making sure that you don't download malware. When working on Reddit in this class, so again, this is called the new interface to Reddit. This interface is a little bit slower and doesn't have all of the information that we'll need for bot developing. So it's recommended to change all of these URLs in Firefox. Instead of www.reddit.com, go to old.reddit.com. And that will open up the old interface, which will be a little bit easier to work with inside of inside of Python. And so here's our image up top, and then down below we have a bunch of different comments that people have posted. Again, so here is an example of a comment that's been deleted. Whoever first created this comment has since deleted it, and so we can no longer see what it is. And this is also an example of a top-level comment because it was replied directly to the submission. This right here is not a top-level comment. It is a reply to this comment right here. I can press this little minus button right here to make this whole tree of comments disappear and get onto the next top-level comment by Osama bin Lefty. Press that minus button, and there's another comment here by the Veil of Maya 1234, and so on. So these are all the top-level comments. These are not top-level comments. And that'll be important when we're working with this Prada library, because you have to do slightly different things depending on whether it's a top-level comment that you're looking at or a reply comment. Any questions so far about just the Reddit interface or any of those Reddit-specific terms? Okay. So let's go to back to the tutorial, copy and paste this code right here into our Python. Save that and rerun this. And hopefully we don't get any errors. Excellent, no errors. So what this is giving us, this submission right here, is the actual submission object that we'll be working with for that particular submission. That's that image and all those comments. One of the very common mistakes that people make when working with this submission object, and this is not inside the tutorial, but I've just found that in past semesters, like at least 80% of the class makes this mistake at some point or other, is that when you call this reddit.submission function and you pass in a URL, you must specifically say URL equals URL. If you don't pass in a URL, sorry, if you do pass in a URL, but you do not say URL equals URL, then you'll get all sorts of weird error messages down the line. So make sure that you add this URL equals inside of the function like this. And again, this is all in the, everything that I've, in our file so far is just copy and pasted from the documentation. Yeah, so this example right here, you can also create a submission by specifying the submission ID or the submission name. This small string of random characters is the submission name. The same thing as this. So both of these two lines do the same thing. But what we're really interested in next is this for loop right here. So for top level comment in submission.comments, print the body of that top level comment. Let's go ahead and copy and paste this into our Python code right here and run this and see what happens. Basically what this is going to do is that, yeah, it's looping over all of those comments, all of those top level comments, and printing out the text of those top level comments down here. So it's at this point not super well formatted, but all of this text right here is the text from the various top level comments in this web page. So things like, it said that he who holds the sacred chalice of Adblock shall find the one button, and so on. You'll also notice that down at the very end, we're getting this error message, attribute error. We'll talk about that in a second, but this is an expected error message at this point, and they mentioned that down here. Before getting into exactly what this error message means, though, we're going to unpack this for loop quite a bit and talk about the different things that you can do with it. And again, the stuff at this point that we're talking about for maybe the next 10 to 15 minutes is stuff that's not directly or not at all in this tutorial, but something that would be obvious to somebody like Guido van Rossum or some just like Python experts. And so that's why it's not in the tutorial. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to comment out these lines right here and open up our code in interactive Python. So Python 3 space -I Wednesday section 2.py. And I'm going into interactive Python so we can get just play around with things a little bit more and get faster feedback on things. And what I want to do is check out this little bit more detail about this submission and this comments variable. So if I type just submission right here, we get something that looks like this: submission ID equals 3G1 Jiffy, which is this thing right here, which is again the name of the submission. And then if we do submission.comments, this will take a couple seconds to load because it's actually loading all of those comments from Reddit, and we get this sort of crazy looking thing down here. And what we want to think about next is how do we map from, like, if ever we're looking at this sort of information in the interactive Python, how do we find the correct location in the Prada documentation related to this information down here? If we want to find things related to the submission, then the submission, this word in all that starts in capitals right here, is what we need to look up in the documentation. That's maybe sort of intuitive. Down here, this sort of really complicated thing, what we need to look up in the documentation is this comment forest. I know it's this comment forest because it's also in like capitalized, C capitalized, F capitalized. This pra.models.comment forest happens to just be the file names, like the directories that this comment forest is located in. But this is the thing that I have to actually look up in the documentation. And so let's go ahead and do that for both of these. So back over in the documentation, we looked at the submission details last time. If we clicked on working with PRA's models, then right down here, there's a submission button. We can click that. And this gives us all the details about the submission. If I want to say, get the author of the submission, the author is an attribute. Again, an attribute is something that comes to the right of a dot. And so back over here, I could do submission dot author. And this tells me the author of that particular submission, Mathild 4. And if I go back over to the actual Reddit webpage and scroll up, here we go. Here's where it shows the author. Let's make that bigger. Mathild 4 is the author of this particular submission. And there's a lot of other attributes that I could get as well. Maybe before we go into the comment forest, any questions about just what I did at this point? Yeah, are you?
When I tried to just enter into the file, I got like an error saying user agent missing.
The question is logging into the file. It said user agent missing. Depending on how exactly you set up your prod.ini, you might have to say user agent equals CS40 up here. In my prod.ini, this user agent, this line right here is included inside of my prod.ini file, so that's why I didn't have to do it. But if you did not put the user agent in your prod.ini, then you will need this. So make that a comment. Some people need that line right there. Good question. Any other questions about anything so far?
One thing that's a little bit confusing, I guess, so like when we store our product.ini, like does it have to be in the same folder? Because like one thing that's confusing too is like let's say that we do upload as a repository, then like how do we get it out of the folder that's still able to product.ini?
Yeah, that's a good question. The question is, where should I store the prod.ini file? So technically, what prod does is it looks for the prod.ini file in whatever your working directory is. And so if you wanted to store it in a different location, you just need to make sure that it's in the working directory and it'll find it. Personally, every time I'm working on these sorts of tasks, I still keep my credential files, like my prod.ini, in the same folder as my Python, the same folder that's going to get uploaded to GitHub. I'm just very, very careful when I'm doing that uploading to uncheck that file. So when you're in the GitHub desktop, it's possible to like upload by directory or just check the different individual files that you want uploaded. And you just have to be careful to make sure that you don't check the prod.ini file.
Like they all be in the same spot.
That's my recommended way to do it.
You can still access the prod.ini file if it's not on the GitHub.
Question is, can you still access prod.ini if it's not on GitHub? And the answer is, as long as it's on your computer, you'll be able to access it on your computer. Somebody else who's downloading it from GitHub, they would not be able to access it. Yeah. It's excellent that you're asking these questions because it means you have the proper sense of fear about these credentials files. Those particular details about like interacting with GitHub, you can pretty much ignore those right now because you're not going to need to upload things to GitHub at this point. You can just put off that that level of fear until the actual like submission step, and make sure that the submission part is where you handle that. Great questions. Yes.
Why is your why is the specification bot?
Question is, why did I put bot right here? Yeah. Good question. So I'm going to go back to our Monday section 2.py file, and in so this information right here, I'm going to go visit this URL right here. This is the documentation for the prod.ini file on the prod documentation website. And scroll down, there's a lot of information, but the thing that we're looking for right here is the contents of the prod.ini file. These four things right here, these are equivalent to the, basically whatever you put inside of here after the square brackets, those are things that are going to get passed to the Reddit function. So up here, there's like a client ID, a client secret, username, password being passed to the pra.reddit function. And so in order to avoid passing those to the function, you just put those things inside of the Prada.ini file, exactly like this. This one does not have a user agent inside of it, and a user agent is required. So user agent is required. So that's why over here, it's required to put a user agent when logging in. On the notes that I had today, I did not put a user agent right here because in my pra.ini file, I added an additional line right here that says user agent equals CS40. But the question was, why exactly, like where does this bot come from? Where does this string right here come from? And this string needs to match whatever you have inside of square brackets right here. In your Prada.ini file, you'll probably only have one set of credentials. And so you can just use the word bot without any number between the square brackets. And then it would match this right here, bot without any number in the square brackets. If I wanted to use bot2 credentials, though, I could change this string to bot2, and then it would know to load this set of credentials and work with this bot. Did that answer your question somewhere in there? Okay. Yes, Skip.
If we wanted to create more than one bot, that makes sense to have like the credentials. We have the same user agent, like all of us have the same user.
Yeah, great question about the user agent. So user agent doesn't actually do anything. It's just an internal thing for Reddit to keep track of statistics. And so you could still keep the same user agent for everything. And so that's why in this example, user agent is not provided because user agent's not really a secret. And so they're only storing the secrets right here. Okay, great questions. But now let's see about the details of this comment forest and what we can do with the comment forest. So previously, we found the submission by coming over here, clicking on working with pros models, and there was submission down here. But if we look at these, we'll see there is no comment forest anywhere in here. Very annoyingly, there's this other classes down here, which is where the comment forest is located. And even more annoyingly, there's no actual order that I can discern to how they've decided to do things here. It's not alphabetical, so it's somewhere in just a weird location. Where is it? Where is it? There it is, down here. And I click that, and it takes us to our details about the comment forest. And this tells us everything that we can do with a comment forest, including it has some extra code examples of things down here. And this code right here, looping over all of the comments, is basically what we copied and pasted from that first tutorial. What I want to look at next is this example code right here of doing comments with a subscript. So it turns out, let's see, so let's do submission.comments again, just to get them loaded. It turns out that this comments, you can treat it just like a list. So subscripting just like a list. And what this comments stores is all of the top level comments of our, of whatever submission we're looking at. So this comment right here represents the very first submission, the second submission, and the third submission. If we want to get the body of a comment, so we saw how to, right here, they're doing top level comment dot body. Top level comment here is all of the values of this list right here. So this is one of those values, so we can just do dot body, and that gives us the body of this particular comment. This body says deleted because if we go back over to our submission and come down here and look at this very first comment, we see that it has been deleted. If we look at the second top level comment, then putting a 1 right here, we'll see that that matches trusted, downloaded, fast download, trusted download, fast download. It matches this second top level comment. And again, so we skipped over all of these like nested comments, replies to replies, and we're only looking at the top level comments in this list right here. There's a lot of other things that we can get about these comments besides just the body of the comment. And to see what those things are, we have to look for this comment type. It's this comment type because when I do this, I get comment down here. And so I have to go to the documentation, find the comment. Here we go. The comment is not in this section, not under other classes, but back in the working with Prada models, very first one. And now here's all the things that I can do with a comment. So there's the body. Turns out that Reddit supports Markdown syntax, just like GitHub. So body gives you the Markdown. And you can also get the HTML of the body. So the way to convert from this body right here to this body HTML is that sort of very first big Python homework that we had of the Markdown compiler that's internally implemented in Reddit, converting from this one to this one here. We can see that if we look at, so comments one, there's the Markdown body underscore HTML, there's the HTML tags, and it's added all these P tags and things for us automatically. We can get the author by doing .author, and there's our Osama bin Lefty as the author of this comment. If we go back to, well, let's go on to the next one, number 2, there's the Veil of Maya, back over here. So first one, Osama bin Laden, then the Veil of Maya. Next one should hopefully give us Straximus. Uh-oh. Did not mean to click it. But if we do a 3 right here, will give us the Straximus. The very first comment over here is deleted. So if we do a 0, we're going to see what happens when we have a deleted comment. So the 0 right here is the deleted comment. And if I hit enter, you'll see that there's actually nothing stored in the author field. That whenever a comment is deleted, the author of that comment is none. If I do is none like this, you see that we get true. So this is the way to check if a comment is deleted, checking if the author is none. Comment 1 is not deleted. So if I check if that is none, we get false. This is true. This is false. Because this comment has been deleted, and this comment has not been deleted. Any questions about any of those things? Yes?
Slightly different. I keep getting a response exception whenever I try to run.
Does it say like a 401?
Yeah, I see 401 HTTP.
Anytime you get an error that's where the error code is for something, that means that somehow your authentication failed. Usually that means every time I've seen it happen with a student on this assignment, it's because there's a typo somewhere in your profile. So I would just double check that your Prada INI file, like basically delete it and recreate it. Somehow you copied and pasted something wrong, probably, and that should hopefully fix it. And again, that's the error message is when you get like a 401, 402, 403, anything that's 400 something, it means that Reddit was not able to authenticate your credentials, and so you're not able to do these things. Good question. Any other questions about anything so far? Okay, so this is accessing the author information. And again, in your lab, one of the things that you'll have to do is loop over all the comments, counting how many comments have been deleted versus how many comments have not been deleted. And this is how you do that. If the author is none, it's been deleted. If the author is not none, then it has not been deleted. So this discussion so far kind of begs the question about, okay, so now we know how to get all of the top level comments, but how do we get these reply comments? So I want Dr. Ayala's comment right here. How do we get that comment? And the answer is that in this submission.comments, in the comment field, so let's go up here to the comment, there is an attribute called replies. And replies provides another instance of our comment forest which is all of the replies to this particular comment. So here, if I did submission.comments of 0.replies and hit enter, we see we get this comment forest down here, which is the same thing that we got when I did submission.comments. This sort of weird hexadecimal number over here is actually the location in memory that the comment forest is physically located at, and so you can ignore it. Yeah, I recommend just ignoring it. The important thing is that they're comment forests. So there's the replies, and if I go for position 0, we get another comment out, and if I do position 0.author, then we get the Dr. Ayala. So back to Reddit. So this was our comments at position 0. This is our comments at position 0.replies at position 0, and that gives us Dr. Ayala. Comments at position 0.replies at position 0 gives us the Dr. Ayala comment. If I press the minus button right here to get to this comment right here, I am a phone book. This is still the comments at position 0. Now we're at replies at position 1. So coming over here, changing comments at position 0, replies at position 1 gives me the I am a phone book. That's the author. If we want to get the body, there's the body. This is not the button of a carpenter. This is not the button of a carpenter. Because replies is just another comment, just like this right here was a comment. This also has another replies dot replies, which gives us another comment forest. And this here is all of the replies to this reply here. So it refers to all of these replies that are replying to I am a phone book. So if I go at position 0 and get the author, we should get the likeness altered over here. So go at position 0, gives me a comment, dot author gives me likeness altered. So it's 0, 1, 0. This is 0. This would be 0, 0. This one is 0, 1. And then 0, 1, 0 is this position right here. Make that down. And there is no other comment down here. So if we try to do, say, position 1 here, if we do a really big number, you'll get this list index out of range. When I do just a position 1 here like this, what's happening is this load more comments button right here, if we click that, then we can see that there are actually more sibling comments of this comment right here. So Moda 199, that was the position 1, Moda 1999. And there are a total of, what is this, 4 sibling comments here. So I can go up to 3, and that'll give me my out of range error. Yeah, I guess the key thing here is that you can chain these dot replies because every time you're just getting another comment, but by changing the index right here, you can change where through this giant tree you're actually looking. The best way to really get comfortable with this and like fully internalize it is just to be playing around with it, spend 10 or 20 minutes on a submission trying to like figure out how to go to a specific area and get the right incantation down here, and once you get the hang of it, it'll be pretty simple. It just takes a little bit to get the hang of it. Any questions about anything so far? Okay, so back to the tutorial. So under tutorials, comment extraction and parsing, we made it down to this right here, and then we just had a big diversion about explaining in detail what's going on right here. But we also, we neglected to talk about this attribute error, what's going on here. More comments, object has no attribute body. And to see exactly what's going on here, I'm going to modify this for loop in just a slight way. So here's our for loop again. And I'm going to modify it so that, let's comment this out right here. And what I'm going to do is print type of top level comment equals, comma, type of top level comment. Save that down here. Control D to exit interactive Python mode. Rerun this, do it non-interactive. Uh-oh. And I'm getting I'm getting this error message, no section bot 2, because I changed this up here before. Should just be bot. Run this. The reason it takes a while to run is that turns out that Reddit imposes a restriction on bots that it can only do 1 request per second, and it takes a couple requests to do this. It has to log in and it has to download the web page, and so it takes maybe 3 or 4 seconds because there's 3 or 4 requests that it has to do. And okay, so what this for loop is doing now is previously we were printing out the contents, the body of all of the messages. Now I'm printing out the type of all of the messages. And if you recall, this type function tells us the type of whatever we pass in. So here's an integer, 3.2 is a float, that is a string, and then type of top level comment is these things up here. So most of them are comments, but this very last one is this more comments thing. What more comments refers to is actually all of those buttons that let you download more comments on Reddit. So over here, here's a button that says load more comments. And so in the Prada library, this is represented as a more comments class. Every time I click this, it gets more comments. And if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, it's going to happen very quick. So this is a good time to look up and just make sure you're looking at the screen for the next 5 seconds. When I scroll down to the very bottom, there was a load more comments down here that automatically got clicked and automatically loaded those more comments. And so there's more top level comments down here. And it turns out that there are certain like Reddit submissions that have hundreds of thousands or millions or even billions of comments posted to them. And so Reddit doesn't want to just turn back, give you all of those comments at once, because that would use a lot of bandwidth. And most people, when you're doing this, you don't actually need 1 billion comments at once. You just need a summary. And so it's only going to give you those comments if you explicitly request them. And by default, the limit is that it just does about 200 comments at a time. In order to, and so yeah, that's what this more comments represents, is that there are more comments here that need to be downloaded that have not been downloaded yet. In order to download these more comments, well, actually before doing that, in order to handle this more comments and not get an error message, what we can do two things. The first is we can have an if statement. We can ask for permission to do this. If the type of top level comment is equal to this thing right here, then this is the actual comment. So we can run this, print out the body, and now we're guaranteeing that it's a comment. So we're guaranteeing that it has this body attribute, and we're not going to end up with this error message. So this is the ask for permission philosophy, but we can also do the ask for forgiveness philosophy of we were getting an error message on this line right here. So let's try to do that line. And the error message that we were getting, let's see, I'll break this up into 2 steps to remind us of what the error message we were getting was. If we do this without the if statement, just printing like this, rerun this, and we can see that this very last line gives us an attribute error because it's the more comments has no attribute body. We can do a try, and accepts attributes error, do nothing, pass. And both of these are ways to fix this attribute error and let our program continue running. So this is the ask for permission strategy. This is the ask for forgiveness strategy. Either way, totally equivalent, and doesn't matter which one you would do. Any questions about that?
Where's the last comment? Capitalized?
Why is what capitalized? Why is this capitalized? How I got this right here was, let me scroll up. Well, let me just redo it. So on this print statement right here, this print statement is actually printing the, and let's comment out this. This print statement right here is printing out the type of all of the comments. So if we save this, come down here and run it, it'll show us all of the types. This thing right here is the type, and you just copy and paste this exactly into what you're comparing up here. So it's the literal answer is that this is capitalized because, or this is capitalized up here because it's capitalized down here. The more philosophical answer is that for kind of annoying reasons, Reddit separates folders with periods in the import statement. So this is like a prof folder with a models folder, with a Reddit folder, with a comment folder inside of it. And then all of those folders happen to be lowercase named. And then this thing right here is the actual Python code that happens to be uppercase named. And one of the sort of Reddit philosophies is just that whenever somebody creates a custom type, it's always going to be capitalized just to make it obvious that it's a custom type, and that everything else is always lowercase. Does that answer the question? Cool. Good question. Any other questions so far? Okay, then we're dealing with, there's more comments. In this, we've seen how to, the ask for forgiveness, ask for permission strategy of dealing with more comments. And let's go ahead and do a quick interactive Python to check how many comments we're getting. Let's do the length of submission.comments. Because submission.comments is a list-like thing, we can take the length of it, and it turns out there are 131, again, these are only top-level comments, but 131 top-level comments that we're getting access to. That's not all of the top-level comments, though, because there was one of those more comments buttons that we pressed in Firefox, and it spit out a whole bunch of more comments. So next, we have to figure out how do we press that more comments button from within Python. And that's what the next section of the tutorial talks about. This replace more function, what it does is it's like clicking all of those load comments buttons. Clicking this is like calling the load more, replace more function. And, oops, wrong one. Here's an example of how they do it. Submission.comments.replaceMore, and then some limit parameter. In order to figure out exactly what this replace more does, we need to go to the documentation for this replace more function. Finding this documentation is a little bit tricky. Anytime you're looking for the documentation of a particular function, you need to look for the web page that is the documentation of the thing to the left of the dot of the function. So this over here, submission.comments, let's find out what that is. Submission.comments, does anybody remember what it is? The comment forest. That submission.comments, the type is the comment forest. Again, you can always check that by just typing it in and seeing what comes up capitalized. And in order to get to the comment forest, it's under other classes, and then scroll down, obnoxiously not in alphabetical order, until you find comment forest. And this is where the replace more function documentation is going to be. Control F, replace more, and now we found it right here. And here it tells us the limit is the maximum number of more comments instances to replace. So the maximum number of those buttons to click. Again, there are some submissions that will have hundreds of thousands of those buttons on them. And every time you press one of those buttons, it takes 1 second for the Prada library to connect to Reddit and give you the results. And so if it didn't have this limit, then it would, on certain situations, take 100,000 seconds, which is a long time. And so by default, they just only do 32. And so by default, it's never going to take more than half a minute to work. So over here, if we do submission.comments.replace more like this, hit enter. It'll take about 32 seconds for this to run. But after it runs, we'll end up having a lot more comments available to us. While this is running, any questions about anything so far? Okay, and let's look at the length of the comments now. And now there are 209 comments. Previously, there was just 131. We ran this more comments, pressed those buttons. Now we have 219. Here.
Can I just explain the whole capitalization versus non-capitalization again?
Sure, the question is about capitalization versus not capitalization. And just like going over exactly what the difference is. This is a little bit of a philosophical topic these are not hard and fast rules that we're talking about now. Python doesn't care what things are capitalized or not capitalized as long as you're consistent everywhere. But one of the conventions in the Python programming language is that every time you have the name of a file, it is always all lowercase, no matter what. And every time you have the name of a variable, it's always all lowercase. And these are just conventions. And so this is the name of a file, pra, this is the name of a file, this is the name of a file. That's why they happen to be lowercase. And the only time things are uppercase in Python is when somebody creates their own new type. So whenever you're wondering, like you have this big long blob right here and you're wondering what is the actual type here? What is the thing that I should be looking for in the documentation? You always look for the uppercase thing. The reason we have this convention in Python that the uppercase things are for types is because that's usually what you're interested in looking for in documentation. And so it's the uppercase things that you want to Google. This other thing and the lowercase stuff is not going to be helpful when you're searching. Did that answer? Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Good question. Any other questions so far? All right.
So my left gets 131. You had that.
So yeah, originally before running the more comments, I got 131. Now I got 219. This still actually does not download all the comments. It only pressed the load comments button 32 times. And it turns out there's more comments, there are more and more comments buttons than just 32. In order to see that, we're going to get the total number of comments in this entire document and compare it to what's displayed on Reddit. Reddit, unfortunately, does not show us the total number of top-level comments, so there's no way to directly check if this is relevant. We can only check if the total number of all comments is correct. In order to do that, and this is a very confusing thing, so this is another good time to pay extra attention to. I'd say everybody gets confused about this at some point in working on this assignment. If we want to get just the top level comments as a list, I can do list of submission.comments. The list function will convert that into a list. This is a list of all top level comments. Very confusingly though, if we do submission.comments.list, this gives us all of the comments. Is a list of all comments, including replies. So this handles that going through the dot replies and has an accumulator inside of it that just adds all those together into one final list. I'm going to leave this up so you can just see those notes for a second. But if we went back to the tutorial, they would actually show the implementation of this function right here. It's uses a while loop to do it, but this gets all of the comments. And it's really annoying to me that they chose the name list right here, because it seems like it should do the same thing as this to me. This, I would call it all comments or something, but they call it list, and that's what we're stuck with.
So why doesn't it in the documentation specify that the comments are getting the top comments?
So the documentation does say that. It's just a little bit confusing. So the question is, in the documentation, why is the documentation suck? And that's a fair question. Most documentation sucks. This is probably like, I would say the gold standard of documentation, because it's about as good as documentation as exists, but it still sucks. So maybe we'll go with like the silver standard. But so here it says top level comment in submission.comments. So you're supposed to just realize that that gives you the top level comment right here. And then if we go all the way down to the bottom, now it just says comment instead of top level comment with this .list function right here. And so you're supposed to realize that because it doesn't explicitly say top level comment, it must be all of the comments. Again, those are things that like the more experienced programmers are able to kind of read between the lines of that stuff. But yeah, it's not super clear, but that is what they're doing. Did that answer the question? Cool. So if I do this and take the length of submission.comments, we'll start off with this one again. That's the length of all the top level comments. .list, that's the length of all of the comments on the actual web page. Here we can see that we have 707, and this number is significantly smaller, it turns out, than if we go back over here to Reddit and look at the number up here. It says there's 764 comments. So we're missing 60 comments overall. And the reason is because there's still more of those buttons that our Python program didn't download. If we run up and try to run the replace more function again, it's not going to actually click those buttons anymore. You can only run the replace more function once. So I'm gonna leave Python, reload Python, rerun the replace more function, but now it's set limit equals to none. So it will download all of them. This will take a little bit longer than the 30 seconds from before. It'll take about a minute or so. And then after we do this and look at the length of the comments, we will have all of the comments. In your Python files that you'll be creating for Reddit, you'll be required to do this line, something like this, basically at the very beginning of your submission or at the very beginning of your for loops in order to make sure that you have all of the comments that you're looping over. But because this line takes so long to do, you don't want to do this. Don't do this while you're debugging. One of the things that's tempting for students or tempting for beginning programmers is because this line right here comes earlier in the code, you want to type it before you type the later stuff. But if you do that, then you'll have to wait a minute down here just to see if you even have a typo or something down here. And so it's very inefficient. You always want to get your for loops and things working. And then after it seems like it's probably working, then you add this replace more up top and try it out on all the comments. So now if we do length of submission.comments.list like that, now we get the full number of comments. Any questions about that? Okay, so that's everything that you need for the reading from Reddit lab, so the lab that's due this week. We've covered all that material, and we'll move on to the writing to Reddit lab. We've laid out a pretty good foundation for that, so we only have about 10 minutes left, but I think we'll be able to get all that material covered. And in order to do that, I'm going to create another file. So let's go ahead and create another new file. We'll call it Wednesday _ section 2 _ part 2.py. And we'll start this file off the same way as this one with this stuff up here. But now we're going to do some replies. And the easiest way to do a reply, well, actually the only way, as far as I know, to do a reply is if we have a submission, there's a function called reply. And you just type in whatever text you want. So example message, and this will create a new reply. Because I'm replying to a submission, it'll create a new top level comment with example message as the body of the comment. And the author will be whatever my bot's name is. Go ahead and hit enter here. And you'll see that in this case, though, I'm getting an API exception saying too old. This post here is, from this example, is about 10 years old. And so it's been in Reddit terminology, it's been archived and you can't post to it anymore. And so we're getting an error message when we do this. We're going to change our URL now to another URL, one specific for this class that was just created last night. And then we'll be able to do that. And actually, we're going to, so for this class, there's a subreddit called BotTown, BOTTOWN, and that's where we'll be doing all of our work in. And you can see that there's a lot of posts and comments up here already because last night I had just some example bots running, and this is what they made last night. And this post I actually just created in the first section's class, and so the first section students already created 2,700 comments from their stuff. So in order to create a post for us to work with, I'm going to press this submit a new text post button right here, and we'll call this the section 2 class post. And then submit. And this URL up here is the URL that I'm going to connect to. This one's a little bit hard to see for you all, long thing to type in, so I'm going to use a different way of creating the submission of just using the ID like this. And down here, no URL, just putting the ID like that. And so that ID is these 6 random letters, and you should be able to type that in, and then you'll be connected to this submission up here. And so I'm gonna unload that, reload this, and now when I do submission.reply example message, it'll take a second. No error message, just returns this comment thing right here. And let's see. I'll be back to this in a second, so if you haven't copied down those letters, you'll get another chance. But I want to come back over to Reddit here, refresh this, and now you can see that we have an example message down here that we've created. Come back over to Reddit here, and or to Python here, and let's say another message, run that, and no error messages. Back over here, F5 refresh. See, it didn't quite get updated yet. Sometimes it takes a few seconds before the Reddit web page is updated. One more time. Hey, come on, Reddit. There we go. There's our another message has been updated. And so it's not too hard. Once you find the comment that you want to reply to, once you find the submission that you want to create a top level post in, all you have to do is submission.reply, and you can do that. If you want to reply to a comment instead of replying to a submission, also not too hard. You just find the comment. So submission.replies at 0. Submission.comments. There we go. Comments at position 0. This is the first comment on that list. And we can verify that with .body. That's the example message. .author is still the CS40 bot. And now if we do .reply of this is a reply, like that, it'll reply to to that comment instead of as a top level comment. Back over to Reddit, F5 this, refresh it, and here's my reply. And I can see that we've got some other people successfully posting some example messages so far. So this is cool, posting one message at a time, but one message at a time is too boring. What we want to do is post 1 million messages at once. So we can use a for loop, for I in range 1 million, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros like this. Let's do submission dot reply of, so this is message, I equals plus string of I, like that. So just creating a string with that's going to count from 0 up to 1 million, posting those different messages. And let's go ahead and print message. Here. We'll do say be a little bit nicer with this. We'll have one text message that we're printing, and we'll print text down here, and then we'll reply text like that. Close out of interactive Python, and let's take that away, that -i, so we can run this without the interactive prompt showing up. And now it's just, it's created these two messages, message equals 0, message equals 1, and then it's giving me another API exception saying rate limit. Looks like you've been doing that a lot. Take a break for 5 seconds before trying again. So Reddit doesn't want people posting 1 million messages at once, and so if you're posting too much, it makes you give a pause. At first, the pause will be 5 seconds, but if you continue pausing for 5 seconds, it'll eventually go up to 5 minutes between posts. But as far as I found, 5 minutes is the longest that it'll make you wait. In order to make our code automatically wait in Python, there is a library called time, and time has a function called sleep, which you can specify how many seconds should we sleep for. If I say sleep 3, it'll sleep for 3 seconds before coming back to life. So up here, I can say time.sleep of 5 to sleep for 5 seconds between posts. I have to import time in order to do that. Import time. And then down here, rerun this again. Now it's gonna wait 5 seconds between each post and before making a new post. And now we should avoid that rate limiting problem. Eventually, after maybe like 50 posts or so, it'll start asking for me to wait longer. And so it would always be safe to do 5 times 60 to wait for 5 minutes. But while you're debugging, you can just make it sleep for 5 seconds so that things go faster. And if we come back over to Reddit and refresh this, we should see that there's lots and lots of messages being posted now, and by my bot and by lots of other bots. Let's see. I want to be respectful of the time limit on class. So this will be our official end of class right now. We have covered everything that you need, all the techniques for both the labs and the actual homework assignment. We'll go over the details next week of how to combine those things together to actually solve the homework assignment. And if anybody has more questions about things, I'm happy to stick around and answer them. But this is the end of class, so I will see you all either in lab or next week. Question, Charlie?
Is there any way to get data from the like tell if there's black text?
Yeah, there is. It's not as elegant as you might like it to be. So this API exception error, you have if you Google it, there should be some example codes. It has its own attribute, which is the number of seconds that you have to wait, and
Extract that from the
exactly. Yep. This OAuth exception
usually means that somewhere your passwords in your Prada INI are not set correctly. Reddit's just saying it can't log you in. But the credentials are correct. And, usually that means that just the things have to be pasted in there correctly. So I would just maybe like delete the file and recreate it, copy and paste stuff over, and hopefully that should work. That's pretty good. But everything seems like it's structured very.
So you guys getting this name error for submission? I think it's actually working because when we tried to access the old comments, it didn't work.
Scroll down. So here you just have Python 3. So it doesn't know to load the file. Use a Python 3 space the file name. And if you're in the interactive Python right now, you still have to. And then no space between the two.
Oh, really? All right, well, at least you got it.
Yeah, and there should be the dash I when you run Python 3 file. And space between the 3 and dash. Now, that's probably not quite the right file. You just have a typo for the cross should be.
I know, I saw mine too.
Pretty cool. This is a different file. It's actually .py.
Oh, okay.
Two.
Yeah,
Here you copy and paste a little bit too much. So you just want to start Python 3. And now it's in the.
Thank you.
I was getting like a no section error
Go ahead and set down here.
for the bot.
Okay, so here it says the Prada INI configuration file does not exist. So I think what's happening is it's not even able to find the file. So here, so the Prada I, Windows 62, you go down to the console, and so the location that Prada looks for this file is whatever your working directory is. Oh, so can you find, like, in the terminal, do the pwd command?
Yeah, I should be in the folder.
It does look. Mind if I touch it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a Prada INI. Okay, can you open up your Prada INI file?
Oh, it's empty. Should I
Oh, yeah. So that's then inside of here you need the all the login credentials of like username equals, password equals, that sort of stuff.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Quick question.
Yep.